I want to begin with a video. Here we go.
So you get home with all your shopping, all your chocolate treats on a Friday. Can't shut cupboard door for jam wagon wheels. Start Monday. I'll start Monday. No point trying to start Friday. Come to something with a kind of a bit of bloody chocolate on a Friday night and treat myself. I'll start Monday. Problem is there's 52 Mondays in a year. I say that every week. Start Monday with a detox, hot water and squirt of Jif lemon. Second bowl of Special K, try to drop a jean size. Oh God, I can't go on. Bloody migraine, it's killing me this. I've only been on it 2 hours. It's started, Jeremy Kyle. By end of this morning, I'm upstairs in bedroom in full length mirror. See if I've lost out. I must have lost something now. Christ, I must have lost something now. By Wednesday, I'm like a junkie on my ass. Not so cocky about my cupboard full of chocolate then when I've nothing left. When I'm stood on chair in kitchen, seeing if anything's fallen out back of cupboard. Must be something. Anything. Bloody mini egg. Something down there.
Okay, guys, so if we want to fulfill our potential and be at our best, the number one simplest thing we can do is just step back and reflect and think about how well are we doing our best to be at our best, because we have more control over that than anybody else does. I just like to do this to start with, rate how well you did your best to be at your best and achieve your goals, either yesterday, or if that's too far to think back, today. 10 would be you were perfect and everything went exactly as you wanted it to. 1 would be it was a failure. It doesn't matter what the score is, it's just about recognizing and stepping back and reflecting. So write down that score. And this is the simplest thing we can do every day, just to check in with ourselves, or what we call self-watch. So in the short session, I'm going to talk about some high-level practical things that we can do to help our team fulfill its potential in 2021. And then I'm going to present the 5 secrets of world-class hybrid and remote working, because this is ultimately what many of us are making the transition towards. I'm going to talk about some of the science behind why that is challenging and some of the practical things that we're helping our clients to do at the moment to overcome these challenges, and that might also be helpful for you. So these are the types of organizations that we work with, and whoever we're working with, we always begin with the brain, because the brain is driving everything that we're doing. How we think, what actions we take, how we behave. So we're going to have a little test to get us thinking about the brain. So it's going to be one of those sessions, guys, where the more notes you make, the more you engage, the more you're going to get out of it. This first test is really simple. I'd just like you to see if you can read the copy in the white lozenge as you would read it in plain English. So we can all make sense of these jumbled words. Why is that? Because it turns out most of what we're doing most of the time is mindless behavior. We are running on autopilot according to large sets of compelling scientific data most of the time. It's mindless. From how we're breathing, to how we make judgments about other people, to how we're listening right now, how I'm speaking. It's not conscious, it's just automatic. So most of what we do most of the time, we can say is a habit. That is, it's automatic or semi-automatic behavior. And we can think of, broadly speaking, that the limbic regions of the brain are very important for how our habits work. And we can make a mini model of the brain if that's helpful to understand this. If you put your left or your right hand flat like this, you put your thumb into the palm of your hand like this, and you wrap your fingers around your thumb like this. This is a mini model of your brain. Now, the thumb in the middle represents the limbic regions. These are the centers that are interested in survival predominantly. And we can break its core interest into 3 core areas. So the context here, guys, is we're Homo sapiens, that's our species. We've been on the planet for, we think, over 300,000 years. And our first instinct is to survive. So this thumb in our brain model is the survival brain. And we can break it into 3 areas. It's interested in staying alive, first of all. Then it's interested in how we're perceived by other people, think social status. then finally it's interested in energy and saving energy. So we think of this as the alive, perceived energy brain, or for short, we call it the ape brain. That's the alive, perceived energy brain. We are great apes, but also this is what drives our behavior. And what we need to recognize is that these, what we call survival habits on the screen there, they are very instinctive for us. And what we also need to recognize is that, like any habit, the way that these habits work, like worrying, for example, or procrastination, for example, or beating yourself up, for example, is the more you practice those habits, the better you get at them. Our brain is made up of about 100 billion neurons, and those neurons are changing all the time in accordance with what you practice. So if you practice worrying a lot, you're going to get really good at worrying, because you're going to get lots of wires in your brain, lots of neurons dedicated to that. So we get good at what we practice, both in a helpful and positive way if we practice helpful things, but also in an unhelpful way. And what lots of people are reporting is that since we had that first lockdown, almost a year ago now, they've got much better at a lot of these really unhelpful behaviours. The challenge with these behaviours is that they are invisible to us. We don't really see ourselves doing them. And because they're invisible, they're really problematic. And it's almost like we are carrying these habits around with us. And it's like a second job that we're doing that directly stops us from doing the job that we want to be doing to help us to be healthy, happy, and at our best. So they're really problematic. And we understand that these types of habits are the biggest waste of resources for any one individual in any 24-hour period, and therefore any team, any family unit, etc. And they are the root cause of all the types of challenges that you see on the slide, all the types of challenges that we're trying to overcome to feel well, to perform to our potential, both at work and in life. And what's really important to recognize here is, therefore, that having new knowledge about what we might need to do to manage stress better, or to be more productive, or to be a better leader is futile. If we're going to get better at these things, we need to build better habits, because the habits drive everything that we do. So tips, etc., are great, but it's about, if you want to change your behavior, you've got to build new habits. So, and we'll come on to that. Just to keep ourselves on top of this, you've got to recognize, guys, that a short-term memory only lasts about 30 seconds, and we can only hold about 5 to 7 bits of information at a time. So your brain is dumping things all the time. And if we want to consolidate information, we need to repeat. One way of repeating is writing things down, which I hope you're doing if these things are of interest. Another thing you can do is test yourself. So I want to see if you can answer the question, what percentage of brain function is mindless? You may have already written this down if you're really on top of things. So if we were looking at this a few years ago, we would have been saying about 95%. Now we think it's at least 98%. 98% of what we're doing is just mindless. It's a habit. So if you got the answer right, you get 10 points, well done. If you didn't get it right, you don't get any points. I'm sorry about that. So keep making the notes, keep paying attention, see if you can earn more points as we go forwards. So how do we stop ourselves from failing then? What I've said so far, I suppose, feels quite negative. So the key thing is, we go back to our brain. So we've got our little brain model in our hand, and the little finger in our model represents the prefrontal cortex, which runs from behind the eyes all the way to the top of the forehead. And we call this part of the brain the hack brain. And we imagine that hack stands for helpful attention control. That is how we would label emotional regulation or self-control, depending if you're looking at neuroscience or social science. But if we can spend more of our time with our attention on and doing things that are helpful for us, life gets a lot easier. We imagine that a special character runs this area of the brain, which I'll give a fanfare to. We call this character Wilhelmina power or willpower. You can decide which one it is for you. And we can, in very, very short terms, we can use it to help us to manage the ape brain and build better habits. So in combination with behavioral science. But we can use our prefrontal cortex, our willpower, to first of all step back and reflect on our habits. And those of you that are bored with what I'm saying so far or are interested in doing this immediately, just go to our website, which is tougherminds.co.uk, and you'll see very clearly labelled in the top right-hand corner is the APE test, which is a quick test that you can use to get you thinking about your helpful and your unhelpful habits. We have much more in-depth versions of that, but it's a good starting point. And then once we've recognised, well, okay, these are the helpful habits that are helping me to be healthy, happy, and at my best, but these are the unhelpful habits that are getting in the way of me being healthy, happy, and at my best. We show you how to target one unhelpful habit at a time and replace that unhelpful habit with something that's much more helpful for you. And we give people the skills so they can keep building more and more habits, both individually and collectively. Because if we want to have high-performing teams that fulfill their potential, we need to get as many people in the organisation doing this as possible. And when you do that, you get what we call a purposeful development organisation. And these types of organisations are just doing much better at all the parameters we measure successful businesses by in 21st century modern VUCA world, the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. They find it much easier to get these types of outcomes. So getting good at building new habits seems to correlate very well with achieving these types of outcomes. So I've spoken a lot there, guys. My screen's frozen because someone just entered the room there, so I'm going to share my slides again. But at this point, I'm going to take any questions. Does anyone have any questions about what I said so far? Is there anything in the chat box I need to check? Okay, so if you do have any questions, guys, just let me know. We can take those verbally. It says the best way to do it with this technology. So that's the landscape. That's what we need to consider. It's all about habits. And we are running on habits all of the time. So if we're going to change behavior and do better, we've got to build new habits. Where lots of our clients are making this transition and working out actually how they're going to make this transition to remote and hybrid working. And doing this, as Marcus was saying, it's more challenging. And our clients are kind of on a continuum from already being best in class at what they do through to people who are striving to be best in class. And the reason these guys are best in class, or what you need to do if you want to be best in class, is you need to create really high-performing teams. And high-performing teams are excellent at communicating and collaborating in order to solve complex problems. So what you see here is lots of what we call triadic relationships. They're good at solving complex problems for themselves and also for their clients. The only constant in the world that we live in is change. So if there's only change, what we need to do is get good at adapting, and adaptation is all about problem solving. And there are some broad rules that we can use to help us to create really good collaboration and communication. The first rule is we need to build psychological safety. So people in the team, in the group, need to feel like others care about them and they've got their best interests at heart. Because if that isn't happening, people's brains don't work properly. And a core technology that we use to help us to build safety in a team is what we call mirror neurons. Mirror neurons allow us to read other people's emotions, but they're really designed to be used in face-to-face, in-person communication. As soon as you get on the video conferencing tech, this stuff's just not as effective, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. The second thing we need to do if we're going to have good communication and collaboration in our teams is share vulnerability. We need everyone to be working on themselves working on ourselves it's like the magic thing that we can do to feel well and perform to our potential in the VUCA world, the fourth industrial revolution, the modern world. But if we want everyone in the team to be working on themselves, the title leaders need to share vulnerability. They need to say, well, I'm working on myself. I'm not perfect. There's things that I can work on, that I can get better at. And that makes it okay for everybody else to do that. And again, here, mirror neurons are really helpful. And the third thing that we need to do is then establish purpose. So what am I working to get better at for? So what are the big goals? What's the strategy? What are the immediate priorities? And we tie those three things together. They act as really strong foundations to allow us to get good communication and good collaboration. The challenge is that as soon as we start working remotely, it just becomes much more difficult to use mirror neurons, which are the core technology in that. And then connected to that, the COVID world. I mean, the COVID world really is just part of the VUCA world. It's just one example of the change that we are continually experiencing. Our brain's number one operating rule is the easier it is to do something, the more likely it is you will do it. And that's why it turns everything into a habit. So our brain doesn't like change. It likes doing what's easiest. So we increasingly feel overwhelmed in the VUCA world, which is why whether you're an adult or a teenager or a child, more people than ever before are reporting that they do not feel very well. So it's almost like we're getting overwhelmed by these tiny little sources of strain, these tiny little stressors. And Marcus was alluding to some of this stuff. What do people report when they've been working from home? They're reporting that it's harder to sustain good sleep, good diet, good exercise habits. They're reporting there's no barrier between work and home life anymore. And what happens is that these things, they stack up day after day after day, and they just overwhelm us ultimately. So what happens is our brain stops working properly, and we get this thing called reduced functional connectivity in our brain, which means our prefrontal cortex isn't working properly because the ape brain takes over everything. So being at our best individually and collectively just gets more challenging. So communication and collaboration, when we're going through these big change transitions that the VUCA will throw at us, and when we're working remotely, just make it much more difficult to communicate and collaborate. So what's the solution? Let me show you this, a little bit of a roadmap here. I'll break it down into 5 simple steps. Let me reinforce the challenges. Remote working, hybrid working, it makes it more challenging for teamwork to happen. So teamwork's more challenging. Influencing other people's behaviour is more challenging remotely, so leading and managing is more challenging. And team performance is going to have to be driven more by people getting good at managing themselves, because we'll be less able to be good at influencing each other. So some of the solutions, well, the core solutions that we're using to help our clients overcome these challenges is, number one, helping everyone in the team to have a better understanding of what they need to do to help the team work really well. And to do that, we use our 5-stage team power model. The metaphor we use here is that we're climbing up the mountain collectively, and there are 5 core stages that we need to go through to do that really efficiently and effectively. And everyone's got a role and responsibility in helping the team to achieve that. And when we're working at home, some of the roles and responsibilities that have been invisible to us become problematic if we don't know that is one of our roles and responsibilities. So maybe one of our roles and responsibilities in the team is to be good at regulating our emotions. But if we're not aware of that, we can't be good at it. So this type of model makes it easier for everyone to understand what they need to do visibly and invisibly to help the team achieve its goals. Connected to that is we've got to make it easier for our leaders to lead and influence each other, influence people positively. So to help them to do that, we teach people in our team power leadership framework, which is based on really good neuroscience, behavioral science, psychology. We teach leaders how their brain works, how to analyze their habits, and how to ultimately build better leadership habits. And the framework we use to help them to do that is our Team Power Leadership Framework, which breaks leadership down into 4 core areas: the role model, the action communicator, the cultural architect, and the swap coach. And we have tools that allow leaders to analyze themselves in these areas and build better habits. We also teach leaders how their people's brains work, and we show them how to use behavioral science, and that's our behavioral science model, to actually help to change their people's behavior. And then the final area, well, the final 3 areas are all interconnected. They're all about empowering people to get better at managing themselves. So we're going to have to get better at educating our people about how their brain works. And I've given you a little bit of a glimpse as to how we do that. We've got to get better at helping people to analyze their habits, the helpful ones and the unhelpful ones. And we have lots of tools that we use our clients to help them do that. And then finally, we've got to help people at getting better to reliably build more helpful habits, so that they're not just aware of what they need to do better at, they've got the skills to actually sustainably build new habits. And that means that they need to also understand behavioral science. We've got some neat tools to help people to do that, like our habit building plans. So your team, you may see you've got some strengths and some weaknesses across those 5 areas, but these are the kind of things that we're doing to help our clients overcome this challenging transition to remote work. And we do that through a range of mechanics, from keynotes to workshops to bespoke programs, to coaching to digital tools that we've created. The final thing I'm going to say is one of the things we just launched recently is our Team Power Leadership Certificate. And this is really popular with our business clients, but actually we're also teaching this to all the professional football managers in England via the LMA, the League Managers Association. So from the Premier League managers downwards, they're learning about this model because they want their guys to up their leadership skills, and they want them to use science to do that. So that's pretty exciting. So this is what we do, guys. We help people to achieve these outcomes. If you want to send me a direct email after this, please do, if you've got any questions. And then if there's loads of free resources, leadership resources, resilience resources on our website, which you can find there. I've gone slightly over, so apologies about that. If anyone has any questions, I think we're all going to take those collectively now. So thank you very much.
That's perfect. Thank you, John, and really, really insightful there. And as John says, you can go to the Tougher Minds website to do that quiz there. And as he says, there's lots of resources for you to check out. John, we've got a couple of questions for you. So Alan's asked, any practical tips for breaking habits we know are bad but can't help, like an afternoon trip to the snack cupboard?
Yeah, so I would say, Alan, we need to be really systematic in giving ourselves the best chance of overcoming and building new habits. So we can have some tips and some tricks, but then you might try that and it fails, and then you think, well, actually, I can't change my behaviour because I tried this tip that John gave me and I failed, and I'm really useless. So I don't want to make you feel like that. I would recommend that we systematically went through a habit building plan to give yourself the best chance of doing that. Of course, you can't eat the biscuits if they're not there, so don't buy them. But of course, the supermarkets are gamifying their stores and make it as easy as possible for you to buy that stuff. So yeah, there are lots of things that you could do, but I'd say we need to be systematic when we're doing that. So that will be my answer, which no doubt is disappointing to you, Alan, but send me an email and let's have a chat, and we'll help you to build a plan to change those unhelpful habits.
Fantastic, thank you. And then Marcus has asked, what's the most common unhelpful habit you come across in your work?
Well, everybody's different ultimately, and the way that everyone would describe their unhelpful habits is different. But I think that one of the things that's very salient in the modern world are unhelpful habits connected back to the P in the 8 model, which is about perception and social status. And the science there is that humans are not the fastest or the strongest animals on the planet. The reason that we've prospered is because we are the best at working intelligently collectively. And we've thrived on the planet because we're good at working in teams. So once you're out of the team, I mean, other people in the team don't like you, your survival chances go down. And the part of our brain that makes us aware of that, of essentially social status, is hardwired into the parts of our brain that tell us we are hungry and we are thirsty. And that's how fundamental social status is in the way that our brain works. And also, if you take things like paracetamol and ibuprofen, which are designed to manage physical pain, they also address social pain. So in our brain, social pain and physical pain are almost the same thing. So connecting back to that question, Marcus, you know, people will worrying and beating yourself up, connected back to how other people perceive me, our social status. And we do a lot of work so we work with some of the biggest companies in the world, from senior managers all the way through to primary schools. And we've got this group of people now. They're about 13 or 14. So in the UK, they're in about year 8 or year 9. That's the first generation ever that has had smartphone technology since they've been alive. And that is causing some real problems. So yeah, we've got a huge challenge in our hands around those areas. But if the number one way to start managing that is to teach people about how their brain works. And we can do that now in a high level way. So yeah. I've gone further, Marcus, than your question, sorry, but I think it's all interconnected.